Jenkins is an open source automation server and integration tool that will help us for continuous integration and continuous delivery process in software development. It is widely used in the software industry to automate various aspects of the software development lifecycle. It is not only can be used in software delivery, it can be used in any other automations like system administration tasks, infrastructure provisioning, many other things. And it is written on Java, so it can be installed and used from any operating system where Java is installed. So it supports multiple platforms. These are some of the advantages of Jenkins. Still, it has many more. Let's go through one by one. Continuous integration, that is CI. So Jenkins automates the process of integrating code changes into a shared repository, allowing for frequent and automated testing of code. So it detects and reports integration issues so early in the development process, and it will improve your software quality. So CI in Jenkins reduce the risk of integration problems during the later stages of development. And continuous delivery. In addition to continuous integration, Jenkins can be extended to support continuous delivery, that is CD. So CD involves automating the deployment of code changes to various environments such as development, staging and production in a consistent and reliable manner. The next one is open source and community. So Jenkins is an open source project with a strong community of contributors and users, and this community continuously develops and maintains plugins and their extensions, offering support through forums, documentations and third-party resources. The another advantages of Jenkins is automations. Jenkins enables the automation of repetitive and time-consuming tasks in the software development process. It allows developers to define and execute jobs which can include building applications, running testings, and deploying to different environments, all without manual intervention. The other advantages of Jenkins is plugin architecture. Jenkins offers a vast ecosystem of plugins that extends its functionality. These plugins help integrate Jenkins with various tools, technologies, and platforms. For example, if you have Ansible or if you have a Docker, Kubernetes or any other technologies that can be integrated along with Jenkins through this kind of plugins, then it is very easy to use. Jenkins provides a user-friendly web-based interface that simplifies configuration and job management. It has a low learning curve, making it easily accessible to both developers and non-technical team members, and it supports multiple platforms. Jenkins can run on various operating systems including Windows, Linux, macOS and more, as it is written in Java. The another advantages of Jenkins is distributed builds. So Jenkins can be set up with a master-slave architecture, allowing you to distribute build and testing workloads across multiple machines. This distributed builds improves performance, reduce build times and enhance scalability with high availability slave nodes. Then Jenkins is customizable. It allows you to define and configure build and deployment pipelines as a code using Jenkins files or pipeline DSL. So you can meet your specific project requirements and workflows with this customizable feature. And it is robust security. Jenkins offers security features to protect your CI/CD pipelines and sensitive data. It supports user authentication, role-based access controls, and integration with external security systems. This ensures that the CI/CD process remains secure. Then, comprehensive testing. Jenkins integrates seamlessly with various testing tools and frameworks, allowing you to perform a wide range of tests, including unit tests, integration tests, and functional tests. So comprehensive testing helps identify and fix the issues early and ensuring the software quality. Then scalability. Jenkins is highly scalable and it can handle the needs of both small and large organizations. With distributed builds, you can scale horizontally by adding more build agents as your project grows. Then finally, web interface. Jenkins provides a web-based user interface for configuration, job management, and monitoring. This makes it easily accessible to both developers and operation teams. with support for role-based access control. So these are some of the advantages of Jenkins, but still Jenkins has a lot more. Let's understand the CI/CD workflow from this diagram. So this is a simple example of CI/CD workflow from code development to deployment. So this CI/CD workflow involves various stages like code development, build stages, artifact generations, deployment stages, automated testings, manual testings, approvals, deployment to productions, continuous monitoring, rollback, logging and reporting. So every CI/CD workflow will have a different stages. According to this diagram, it starts from code development. So where the developers will be committing the code on the development phases. When the code is committed, the CI server, that is the Jenkins, detects the change and CI server automatically triggers a build process. This build stage will check out the latest code from the repository and it will compile the code and it will create the code based on your project requirement like executable or artifactory. So this build may include unit test to ensure code quality. If the build or test fails, the team will be notified. And the next stage is testing. It can be an automated testing or it can be a manual testing. Then you have a staging environment. It will be varying from the different projects. We can consider this as a non-production environment or staging environment. After deploying your code, it can be deployed to your next higher environment like dev or QA. Then finally, it will be deployed to production. So after deployment, the application is continuously monitored for performance, security and other metrics. If any issues detected, the alerts will be triggered to the respective teams. So this is the simple CI/CD workflow. But actual implementation can be vary depending on the organization, tools that you used and based on the specific environments. Let's see this multi-environment CI/CD workflow. Previously, we have seen the simple CI/CD workflow from code development to the deployment stage. But how this can be achieved with the multi-environment? After testing, that will be going to staging area, then it will go to the higher environment, then finally it will go to the production environment. For all this, the code development should have a dedicated branch for each environment for this smooth CI/CD. So here on this source code management, you will have different branches being created for your environments. For development environment, you will have a different branch, something like develop branch, or for QA, you can have a QA branch. For pre-prod, you can have a pre-prod branch, and prod, you can have a prod branch. The concept of the CI/CD workflow is the developer will keep on developing the code and they will be pushing the code to that development branch. Then the code will be compiled and it will be created as an executable or artifactory. Then that will be deployed to the development environment alone. So the developer make the changes on the code level and they will be pushing only to the development branch, not to any other branches. After the testing from this environment, then the code from this development branch will be pushed to QA branch. From this QA branch, the code will be deployed to QA environment. So if you have a dedicated branch for each environment, there will not be any conflicts or mismatch of your codes. This is how the multi-environment CI/CD workflow will be implemented, and this will be vary depending on the organization and the project environments. After completing the testing of QA environment, then based on your project, you may have only one branch like QA that can be deployed to QA, pre-prod, prod. On some projects, you may have a dedicated branch for pre-prod as well and prod as well. Here we have only one QA branch that is deployed to QA. After finishing the testing, then again the same code from QA will be deployed to pre-prod. And once the testing is completed on pre-prod environment, again the code from the QA branch will be deployed to production environment. If all good in production environment, that release code is considered as a stable version and that will be deployed to master branch. This is a simple multi-environment CI/CD workflow. So I have two servers. One is installed with Ubuntu 20, the other one is installed with CentOS 8. And both of these servers have internet access so that I can install the required packages. Also, I have the admin privilege. First, we'll install Jenkins on Ubuntu and we'll do the rest of the configuration. Then finally, we'll go to the CentOS. So this is the first command I'm going to execute, that is to update the repository. Now we'll install Java because Java is a required packages for Jenkins. So I'll be using apt-get to install this Java. So Java is installed. Let's verify the version. So we have installed the Java version of 11. Let's add Jenkins repository. Okay, so I have added the Jenkins key and I have added the repository to source list. All these commands will be available from our blog. As you have added a new repository, we need to update the repository again using the command apt-get update. Once you have updated your repository, we can start installing Jenkins using apt-get command. So the Jenkins is installed. You can verify with the dpkg command. So we have installed the Jenkins package and the version of Jenkins is 2.414.2. Let's start and enable Jenkins service so that we can access it through the browser. Let's check the status of the Jenkins service. It is loaded and active. So this is my IP through which I am going to access this Jenkins. IP address :8080 and this is the default Jenkins application port. So this is a welcome screen on which you will be prompted to enter few informations like you have to unlock Jenkins and you have to create user admin and you have to install recommended plugins. So we'll start with one by one. First, let's unlock Jenkins. The instructions will be over here. Okay, this is the file that contains the secret to unlock Jenkins. Use sudo. Copy the secret, enter the value over here and just click on continue. If you are not able to access your Jenkins along with this port number 8080, probably you might have a firewall enabled on your Ubuntu. On my machine it is inactive. If that is enabled, then you have to allow a port called 8080 using this command. As it is inactive on my machine, I don't need to worry about firewall. So coming back to the initial setup, we have unlocked the Jenkins. Now it will be prompting you to customize the Jenkins, like whether you want to install suggested plugins or you want to customize the plugins. Okay, I will go with install suggested plugins and this is the recommended plugins. Okay, click on it and it will start installing the plugins. Sometimes these plugins will be failed, but that's fine. Whatever plugins we need in future, we can install it manually. It will take some time, depends on your internet bandwidth. Okay, so the plugins are installed. Now we need to create an admin user and this is your first admin user. Okay, let me put devops as a username and put some password. Okay, DevOps administrator and email ID. Once this is done, you can click on save and continue. If you didn't create this admin user called DevOps or something else, then you have to use the default admin as a user. It's up to you, doesn't matter. Okay, so this is the Jenkins URL for us. Already we have used this URL to access it. Click on save and finish. That's it. Jenkins is ready. Start using Jenkins. So this is your home page of your Jenkins after you have logged in. Since this is a freshly installed Jenkins, we have to do few other additional configurations to make your Jenkins more strong and stable. So the changes I'm going to make on Jenkins, like I'll be providing the sudo access. Also, I will change the user shell. I will tell you why. Any users created through this Jenkins console are only to manage Jenkins through web browser. But by default, on your system, you can see the user called Jenkins created on your operating system, and this is the only user will run everything in background, even if you have logged in using any users on the console. So this user Jenkins is created during the installation of Jenkins at the operating system level, but this is a non-root user. If you want to perform any high-level task or any other services that wants to integrate with Jenkins, that would require admin access for this Jenkins user. Considering that, I am going to provide a sudo access. Also, you need to make sure that the user shell of Jenkins is bin bash or any other shell that will allow you to log into the user, so that you can switch over to the user called Jenkins and you can perform any administration task with the user called Jenkins using CLI. Let me switch over to Jenkins and it is asking me to enter the password. I have not set password for Jenkins. Okay, I have set the password for Jenkins user on the operating system level. Let me switch over to Jenkins. I am able to log in with the user called Jenkins. And if you run any sudo command, it will prompt you to enter the password. And if you give any commands on the Jenkins jobs that require the admin privileges, then it will prompt you to enter the password over there as well. So in order to avoid this, better you provide sudo access with no password prompting. Let me log out and use sudo vim. There is a sudoer file. Just open it, and here you can see the user entries. Just copy and paste. Here add the username called Jenkins, and here add a parameter called no password colon. So this will not ask you to enter the sudo password. Okay, just save and exit from this file. Again switch over to Jenkins. This is a user password. Alright, let me run some sudo command. That's it. It is not asked me to enter the sudo password. Perfect. Now you can use any admin related command along with sudo on your Jenkins job. That's all the configuration we have to be performed on Jenkins. So we have installed and configured the required changes of Jenkins on Ubuntu server. Let's jump into the CentOS. Again, we'll start with update the repository. Okay, let's install Java. Okay, now verify the Java version. So we have installed Java 11. Let's add Jenkins repository. and import the key for the Jenkins repository now. Then we can install Jenkins. Once the Jenkins is installed, let's start and enable the service. Let's check the status of the Jenkins service. So it is loaded and active. So we can access our Jenkins through browser. Since this is CentOS, by default the firewall will be enabled, so that let's add the Jenkins port number 8080. Before that, let me get the IP of this CentOS machine and we'll try to access it through browser. I am not able to access it. The firewall might be blocking it. So let's go back to the terminal and use the firewall cmd command to add port number 8080 and make it permanent. And also we need to reload the firewall rule. Let's try to access it again. Now we are able to access it. Okay, again this is a welcome screen. We have to unlock Jenkins and we have to create admin user. Also we need to install the suggested plugins as we have done for Ubuntu Jenkins. So I will skip this part. Additionally, we have done some changes on Ubuntu, like we have enabled the sudo access. Also we made sure the user shell is bin bash or not. Also we have set the Jenkins user password. Okay, so the Jenkins user, non-root user, so obviously we have to enable the sudo access. And if you see, the shell is bin false, so Jenkins user will not be able to log into this shell. Let's change this. Also we'll set a password to Jenkins user. Okay, I'm logged into Jenkins user. If you run any sudo related command, it will prompt you to enter the sudo password. Get back to root user and open the sudo file and make the similar entry what we have done on Ubuntu server. In the last session, we have completely installed fresh Jenkins on Ubuntu and CentOS. So this is my Jenkins console where I have logged in with my admin user called devops. Once you have logged in with your username, you can see the username over here along with some options. On the left side panel, you can see the options called new item. This will help you in creating jobs, and here you can see the people, that is users, and build history, through which you can see the number of build and the respective histories. And the other option is called manage Jenkins. This is the option where you can manage your entire Jenkins, something like tool configurations, slave nodes, system configurations, user level configurations, and many other options. Okay, so entirely if you want to manage your Jenkins, all the options will be available over this option. My view is nothing but you can customize the view of your console through this option. And here you have an option called build queue. Here you can see the number of jobs are in queue. Then you can see the build executor status. This is nothing but it can run 2 jobs simultaneously. By default on Jenkins we have set the number of executor as 2. If Jenkins getting more number of jobs to be built, then the third and fourth or further jobs will be queued as a pending. After completion of these 2 jobs, then the queued jobs will be in progress. Under this people option, you can see the list of users already created. Let's go to manage Jenkins. Here you can see different sections called system configuration, securities, status informations, troubleshooting, tools and actions, and still you can see more if you have installed number of plugins. Under system configuration, you can see the options called system, tools, plugins, nodes, clouds. We will look into this every options going forward of each topics. Under security, you have a security, credentials, credential providers, users. Okay. If you want to create, delete, modify users, then you have to use this option. And if you want to manage your authentication and authorization, then security is the right option. Okay. Let's go to the security options. First, we'll talk about the authentications. Okay. Here you can see the options called authentication and authorization and security realm. Okay. On authentications, there is an option called security realm. How do you want your Jenkins get authenticated? Okay. There are few options. Like, let's talk about the main options. And if you have a LDAP or Active Directory, something like that, then you can use this option and you can provide your Active Directory or LDAP server through which users of your Active Directory will be able to log in to this Jenkins. The other important option is Unix User Group Database. If you select this Unix User Group Database option, then users that are created on the Jenkins server, they will be able to log in to this Jenkins. So these are the main authentication type Jenkins supports. Let me quickly go through these options one by one. I don't have a LDAP Active Directory, so I cannot use this, but I will show you this Unix User Group Database. Okay. Just select this option and click on test so that if you have any issue, you can troubleshoot it. Okay. Since I have selected Unix User Group Database, user Jenkins need to be part of group shadow, then only Jenkins user can read etc shadow. In the last session, I have clearly told that any users you create or manage using this Jenkins console, still user Jenkins on the operating system level will be used on the background. Let's add this Jenkins user to group called shadow. I have added the user Jenkins to this group. Let me restart Jenkins. This is my admin user account. I need to log in again. Here if you see under people section, I have these many users. So I'm going to change the authentication type to Unix user groups. Let's do a test again. It is success. Now apply. I have a list of users on the operating system level, that is Selva, and if you see on my Jenkins, I don't have this user Selva here. So since we have used the authentication type as Unix user group, let's try to log in with the username called Selva. I am able to log in with the user that is created on the operating system level. So the authentication can be set to either Jenkins user owned database, LDAP, or Unix user group database. So we have to decide which type of authentication we are going to use for our Jenkins. So let me change it back to Jenkins own user database so that the users that are created on Jenkins only will be able to log in. Let me apply. And again, if you try to log in, it will not allow you to log in with the OS level user because we have changed the authentication type back to Jenkins user database. So let me use some user from the Jenkins. this user called Ravi is created on Jenkins, so I'm able to log in. So this is authentications. Let's go back to manage Jenkins. Let's see how to create users on Jenkins. If you want to create any users, go to manage Jenkins, and under security you will have an option called users. Click on it. Here there is an option to create user. Here you can specify the username and password of it. It is just a form. Once you are finished, then click on create user. So I have created John. So we have these many users. And if you want to manage any users, like you want to reset password or you want to delete the user, so you can click on the user profile. For example, I want to manage the user called John. Click on it. And here you can see the list of options that is belongs to user John. Here if you go to configure, you can manage the user. You can change the full name, any descriptions, if you have any tokens, credentials, email address, views, notification URLs. Here is a password section where you can change the password if you want. And click on apply and save, so that you can change the password. And if you want to terminate all session of the user called Jenkins, then yes, you can use this option. So you explore all of these options. It might be useful for you. If you want to delete any user, there is an option over here to delete it. And this setting icon is to configure this user. It will directly take you to the configure option. Okay, so we are done with authentication. Now we'll talk about the authorization. So authorization is nothing but what is authorized to perform by the users. Okay, so here there are few options, like anyone can do anything, legacy mode, logged in users can do anything, matrix based security, project based strategy. All right, you have different types of authorizations. I would suggest the most important option is logged in users can do anything, and still we have few more options. I will tell you why. Anyone can do anything. Don't select this option. It is not advisable, because without logging in, anybody can do anything. It is not recommended. And legacy mode, we don't use it. Logged in users can do anything. This is okay, because users who logged into the Jenkins can do anything, because by default everybody will be a admin user. So this is okay as a beginner, but in real time we don't use this option. Okay, either we have to go for matrix based security or project based matrix strategy. Okay, here you can see similar options like user groups. This is a overall permission, credentials, agents, jobs, run, view, SEM related. Anonymous, authenticated users. Authenticated users is nothing but the users created on Jenkins. All those users will be part of this authenticated users. For example, on this overall section, if I select read here, all the users will be read-only users. Okay. If I select this administrator, then all users will be administrator. Since I have selected administrator, all other options are disabled. If you want to customize it, you can use these options. I can set to read. You can give only view. You can give update option. You can give manage domain permission. You can give delete. If I give delete, all users can delete the credential as well. Okay. And this is agent. Agent is nothing but management of nodes, slave nodes. Okay. If I give create, the users can create nodes. They can delete nodes. They can configure nodes. So you will have multiple options to manage these kind of items. Okay, this is part of jobs. You can read, move, discover, delete jobs, create jobs, configure, cancel, build, and you have an option called run, and you have an option called view, and you have an option called SEM. So for every item there is a permission that can be set. So these are called matrix based, project based. Users logged into Jenkins can do anything, but that is not advisable. We need special permission for each roles. something like developers may have a different roles, build engineers may have a different roles, L1 engineers may have a different roles. We don't use this option in real time. We have to go for some other advanced options like matrix based, project based or role based. Okay. On this we are going to use role based authorization. Here you cannot see that option at this point because this is a freshly installed Jenkins. If you want to have a role based authorization, then we have to install a plugin called role based strategy. If you want to install any plugins, again go to manage Jenkins. This is the only option you can manage your Jenkins. Okay, so just click on manage Jenkins and go to plugins. Here you have multiple options. We'll talk about all the options in the plugin management topic. Okay, let me quickly install role based authorization strategy. Select the plugin and install it. This is one of the best role based strategy plugin that will be used in many real-time projects. Plugins are installed, so go back to Jenkins and click on security. Under authorization, if you see, one more option is there called role-based strategy. I have selected this option. That's it. Okay. Once you have selected this authorization, role-based strategy, then we need to create different roles, different access, groups and all. Okay. Just select this authorization role-based strategy, click on apply and save and come out of this page. Now under security, if you see, one more new option has come, that is manage and assign roles. This option has come only from the plugin that we have installed recently. So click on this and here you can see more options like manage roles, assign roles, permission templates, role strategy, macros. Here these are the two options mainly we will use. We will manage roles and we will assign roles. On this manage roles, we are going to create few roles that is required for our projects. Alright, we are going to provide read-only access to specific users and we want to have few users part of a specific project called iMedia. So those users will be allowed to use only iMedia jobs and other users will be a build users. They will be allowed to only build jobs. So already I have created all these users. Now we are going to create roles and will assign these users to the specific roles. By default you have a role called admin and here on overall section the administrator is already selected. Any user belong to this group will have a full permission. Now I am going to create read-only users. So once you have added, the role is created. Now we'll create iMedia, add. Now we'll create build users. So this will be varied based on the project requirement. Now you can create multiple roles like developers, admins, build engineers, any roles. Okay, now we'll customize the permissions. You must select read for all the roles. If not, no permissions will be assigned. Either role should be part of read or administer. Then you can customize the other options. Okay, so the read is compulsory. If not, that has to be part of administrator. Okay, now we'll give the permission for each roles. Read only users. So these role should be able to read the jobs. So here under this job, there is an option called read. Just select this. And iMedia users. This role is created only for specific project. So the users belongs to this role should be managed only the specific iMedia jobs. Okay. So I don't have any specific pattern based options. So let me ignore all these options for now. Now go to this build user. Build user is nothing but any users part of this role will be able to build any jobs. So on these jobs, there is an option called build. That's it. So we have customized our permissions for a specific roles. So this is done. Now if you scroll down, there is an option called item roles. So item roles is another advanced function through which you can use pattern based access. Okay. This is where I am going to use these iMedia users. For example, if I have hundreds of jobs, I can have infrastructure jobs, I can have provisioning jobs, system jobs, cron jobs, project based jobs. And if I use any pattern, something like any jobs that starts with iMedia, then I can give the access to the users. Let me show you that. I'm copying this role, I'm putting over here, and here I'm going to select a pattern. Then click on add. So once you have added, you can see the role created, and this is the pattern based. And here on this job, you can select, let me give only read for now, so that the users belongs to this role will be able to see only iMedia jobs, not every jobs. So this is how we can have a different roles, different permissions. Let's apply and exit from here. Now go to Jenkins. Let me create few jobs. Just ignore these jobs for now. We have multiple types of jobs. We'll talk about this later in the job management topic. Let me quickly create few jobs. So now we have created some random jobs to test the different access. Okay. Actually, we have created the roles, but not we have assigned the users to the specific roles. In order to assign roles, here there is an option called assign roles. Click on it. Here you can have a different roles like global roles, item roles, agent roles. Agent roles is nothing but a node slave based access. And global roles and item roles, these are the main roles we will be using. And see, these are the roles we have created. Admin was already there, and we have created read only users, we have created iMedia users and build users. And you can add n number of users over here, and you can assign roles to each user. For example, let me add user first. Alright, so I have added all the users. Now we'll assign each user to the specific roles. So as per our plan, John should be belongs to build user. Okay, so select build user, and Karthik should be part of read only users. Kingston should be part of iMedia user. Ravi is also part of iMedia user, and Venkat should be part of read only user, and Vimal should be part of build user. And we have created one item role called iMedia users. Okay, you have to add the user as well. Kingston and Ravi should be part of this iMedia user item roles. The user belongs to iMedia users would be able to run only iMedia based jobs. So obviously you have to use this item roles, because this only will support pattern based access. So let me select these two and apply and save. It will be little confusing because in a single session we are managing users, we are managing roles, and we are creating different access. Please watch it again and again. You will get some idea. So that's it. We have created users, we have created roles, and we have assigned the users to the specific roles. Let's log out and check each users. First, we'll check the read-only users. Venkat. Here if you see, he is able to list all 4 jobs that we have created. Even you may have 100 jobs. So he will be able to view it because we have given the read-only permission for these users. Venkat and Karthik are read-only users. Obviously, Venkat and Karthik are belongs to read-only users. If you click on the jobs, here he can read the jobs, but he cannot perform, build, delete, anything. So he is just a read-only user. Let's log in with Vimal and John. Those are belongs to build users. So these users will be able to build any jobs. This user belongs to build is not able to view any jobs, which means we are missing some permission for build users. Okay, here there is a build option, but there is no read option. Only if they are able to read, then only they can build. Apply. After refresh, I am able to see. If you want to have a specific permission, be careful and assign the permission accordingly. Now click on this job. Since Vimal and John are belongs to build user, so obviously they will have a build option to build any jobs. Let's log out. Now quickly log in to Ravi or Kingston. They are belongs to iMedia users. They should be able to manage or build only iMedia based jobs. Okay, if you see, I have created 4 jobs on the Jenkins, but this user is able to view only 2 jobs because we have created a pattern for iMedia users. So this is what we want for iMedia. If you click on it, I have not set any build permission to this users, so obviously I have set only read permission. I didn't give any further permission. So let me give all. Click on apply. Now go back to Ravi's login, refresh it. Now you can see all the options. Build now, he can configure, he can delete, he can rename everything. So he can do anything with the only iMedia based jobs. So this is our freshly installed Jenkins console where we have a few set of jobs. As we have discussed in the previous sessions, so on Jenkins, if you want to perform any task like building, deploying or anything, you need to have a job for the specific task. So in order to do all these tasks, we need to perform few things like we need to create a job, we need to configure the job, we need to schedule the job and we need to monitor the job. So how do we create that? On the Jenkins console, there will be an option called new item on the left side panel. Just click on this. Here you have to give a meaningful name for your job. If you have application name, then specify the application name followed by what action it is. If you have a meaningful name, then that will be easy for you to manage your hundreds of jobs. Bus app build or deploy or create environment, something like that. This is just a name and you have a type of jobs: freestyle projects, pipeline, multi-configuration, multi-branch pipeline and many more. These are basic type of jobs. Still you can have more, that is based on the plugins you have installed. Generally, if you have a single task, then people will go for freestyle projects. If you have a multiple stages on your jobs, then you must go for some pipeline jobs. Either you can go for pipeline jobs or you can go for multi-branch pipeline, which means if you have a single pipeline, then this is the right option. If you have a repository where you have multiple branches, then you should go for multi-branch pipeline. So pipeline job is nothing but there is a format called DSL, which is domain specific language. With these pipeline jobs, you can define your entire automation process in single code. This is an example of such pipeline code. It will start with pipeline with braces and you will have different sections that will include global section, also the staging sections. On the staging section, we will add multiple stages like checkout, build, image push and environment deployment. So this is how we will create multiple stages and this is what pipelines. So mostly we will go for freestyle project if you have a single task to be performed, or if you have multiple stages, and then you can go for pipeline type jobs. Let me go with freestyle for now and click on OK. So you have created a job Now we need to configure the job. What need to be performed using this job? On this configuration, you will have certain tasks, like you will have an option called general. You will have an option to manage your source code management. You will have an option for build triggers, build environment, build steps, post build. So every job will have these certain functions. If you click on general, you will have option to put some meaningful description, and you will have further options to manage it. Something like, do you want to discard old builds, which means this will remove old builds. If you are not sure about these options, then there will be a question mark on the right side. If you click on it, you will have a clear manual page. Okay, and you have more options, and sometime you will not see these options on your freshly installed Jenkins. On that case, it would require to install plugins. For example, if you don't have this option called GitHub projects, then you have not installed that plugin. That's it. If you want this option, you have to install the plugin. And this option, this project is parameterized. This will help you to have a parameterized jobs, and we have a separate section for this. We will cover these in the later section. So this is general. And if you scroll down, you have another section called source code management. In short, this is SCM. Okay. None means it is not going to check out any code from your Git repository. If you have enabled this Git, then you have to provide your Git repository URL. It might be Git, Bitbucket, GitHub, from anywhere. The point is you need to provide your code repository. And if you have any specific credentials, then yes, we have to specify the credential over here, and it will not list you anything until you add your credential. And on this repository, which branch you want to check out to perform this task. And the third option is build trigger. Build trigger is nothing but how you are going to trigger this job. Are you going to manually run this job, or you are going to scheduling for a particular time, or you are going to trigger this build based on commits on your repository you have mentioned over source code management. So these are build triggers. So there are few options like trigger build remotes, which means from remote server using some script you can hit this Jenkins console through which you can trigger this job, or build after other projects are built. This job can be a downstream job, which means there should be a upstream job. After that job has executed successfully, then this job will be triggered. So this job will be considered as a downstream job. And this is periodically, which means you can use the cron time format to schedule your job. So every 5 minutes, this job will be triggered. It means this job will be running every day around 10 a.m. So these are build triggers. Based on the job you are going to perform, we need to select the right option. To trigger this job based on your code repository, commit or polling, then you can have these kind of options. Mostly people will use this poll SCM. Here also you can schedule for every 30 minutes or every 5 minutes or every 1 hour. If you have selected SCM, then it will go to your code repository and will check for any new commits. If this job finds a new commit, then this job will be triggered. Build environment, which means how you are going to manage your job and the environment. Environment is not your development or QA environment. This is something on this job related. For example, delete workspace before build start, which means you can delete your current directory before this job starts. If you have a credential or something on a file, you can use this option and you can select the type, and you can add timestamps to the console output, and you can use build tools. Before running the job, you can assign the tools. variables. And this is the main option, build steps. By creating this job, what you are going to perform. If you click on it, you will have multiple options. Since this is a newly installed Jenkins, you have limited options. Execute Windows batch command, execute shell, invoke and invoke Gradle, run with timeout, and build status to pending. Here if I have execute shell, this will create a temporary shell scripting file to perform the task. For example, here you can use all your commands in sequence like how you create shell scripting. For example, git checkout some git repository, and you can use docker build, and you can deploy the image, or you can perform some Kubernetes deployment. Anything you perform on the command line interface that can be used over here. But the problem is, any command you use here, that should be installed on the Jenkins server. If not, you will get an error like command not found. Here you can add more number of steps. You can add more. So this will be like sequential steps. Based on your request, you can add multiple steps. Now finally, post build actions. Here, once the job is completed successfully or failed, what you are going to do? Are you going to trigger any other job as downstream jobs, or you want to notify the developers or administrators? All these post build actions can be found over here. Email notifications, you want to build other projects, which means this job will be upstream jobs of the other downstream jobs. All these options will be discussed in the later sections. We have advanced topics in the future as well. Okay, let me quickly add one simple job. I have a repository on my GitHub, so let me use that Git over here. If I specify this repo on this Git, the first action would be check out the code repository on your Jenkins workspace. Let me enter the repository URL. If you have a public repository, then we don't need to add any credential. If you have a private repository, then yes, we have to add a credential. Let me show you quickly. Click on this add and Jenkins. Here you need to specify the type of credential. Mostly it should be a global credential. Then kind. What type of credential you are going to use? Is it a username or password? Is it a AWS secret key and access key, or is it a secret file? We need to select over here. Let me go with username with password and scope. It should be a global or system. Here you can specify the username, your GitHub credential over here. Let me use this, and if you enable this, this username will be in the hash code. And password, if you want to have a unique ID in the name of the credential, yes, you can give it. ID is nothing but you can have a meaningful name for this credential, so that this particular credential can be used in other jobs as well. Okay, if you want to give any description, then obviously you can give it. Then add. Now if you select the credential, you can see the newly created credential. Then select it and which branch you want to build. For example, if you want to check out only the develop branch, then you have to specify over here. And I don't have multiple branch. I have a branch called main master on that repository, so I've used this. And on build trigger, I'm not going to schedule anything for now. We have a separate section, so I'm going to trigger it manually, so I don't select any options. I have selected delete workspace before build get starts. So what I'm going to do is simply ls star, just to show you what is happening on the background. I don't want this execute shell. I'm going to delete it, and I don't want any post build actions for now. So just click on apply and save. So we have created a job called bus app create environment. Let me go back to the main Jenkins. Here you can see the list of jobs. If you want to manage any jobs, click on it. Here it will show you the status, then number of changes. I don't have any build for now, and this is the workspace, which means for every job there will be a directory. It will be created under Jenkins workspace. I will show you in some time. You can wipe out the workspace and you can build now. If I click this option, the job will be triggered immediately. And if you want to manage your job, then you have to click on this option. If you click on configure, again you will have multiple options to configure it, and you can delete the project. If you don't want this job, then you can delete this job. If you want to rename the job, then obviously you can rename it. And here it will show you the list of history of the builds. Let me quickly run this. Once you have clicked on, you will see the build history. So it has run only one time and it is successful. And if you want to see what has happened with this build history, just click on this. On this build number, it will show you multiple options like timestamp, how much time it has taken, when it has started, who has started this, and what revision it has checked out, and changes. If you have any changes, then it will show here. Console output. This will help you to troubleshoot or go through what has happened on the job. If you go through this, it started by user and it is running as system and it is running on this particular directory. I told you, right, for every job that will create a job directory with the name under workspace. If you go to your Jenkins, on this path you can see the job that has run. So it is creating a workspace directory and it has cleaned up because we have selected the option, to delete the workspace before the jobs get created. So it is deleted, and since we have selected the SCM, it is using the credential GitHub bus app. These are git checkout. After this is done, then this is the shell script we have used. This will create a temporary shell scripting for you and add all the commands you have entered inside the execute shell section. I have added only ls star listing all the files within that repository. If you have a repeated task, then you can always create these kind of jobs and put everything so that you can manage your repeated task using Jenkins. And if you want to delete this build, you can delete it. This will just delete the history, nothing else. If you want to change anything, then again you can click on configure, then go to the respective section which you want to change. For example, if you have any script, something to deploy, or if you have a Docker file, inside the repository, then you can use docker build dot command, right? So everything you can perform through this execute shell. And also if you want to integrate Ansible, then you can use Ansible command. Also, if you install the respective plugins, then you don't need to use all these CLIs. You can directly use the plugins options, and that will be a form based where you can use all your information. And we have the next section that will cover the plugin management, where we will discuss about all plugins options. Okay. Now keep in mind that any command you are giving in this section, that command should be available on the Jenkins. Let me apply, save, and re-trigger the build again. It is failed. So click on the build history. So we should go to console output and go through the logs. So the first command, it has run successfully. It is listing all the files. And the second command is showing the error Docker not found. This is what I was telling. And if I want to disable this job, then on this job management, there is an option called disable project, through which you can disable it. So this job will not be triggered at any cost. And if you want to enable it back, click on this enable. And if you want to delete the project, you can delete it. Only if you are familiar with all these options, then only you would be able to perform many automation tasks. Going forward, we are going to create a multi-environment CI/CD deployment that will consist various stages, and we are going to perform these multi-environment deployment in two ways. One is with upstream and downstream jobs, and another one using pipeline. So you should be familiar with all these options. In Jenkins, most of the automations happens through plugins only. That is because these Jenkins plugins are used to extend the functionality of the Jenkins automation server that will help us to perform lot of automation things. Why? Because these plugins are like additional tools that will provide some additional options for you to specify or customize the feature and that supports specific tasks. Each plugin is designed for specific task or integration, such as building code, running testing, deploying applications, sending notifications, and more. For example, if you are integrating a Maven or Ansible or Docker, then you will install specific plugin for these specific task. In that case, the plugin you install specifically helping you for that specific task. For example, if you are going to use a Docker plugin, then that Docker plugin is specifically helping you to perform the specific Docker related task. So by adding the right plugins, you can make your Jenkins more powerful and efficient. These plugins saves you time and effort by automating repetitive tasks. For example, instead of manually compiling code using some commands, you can use these plugins to do it automatically whenever there is a code change. Then consistency. These plugins ensure that the tasks are performed consistently and according to your configuration. This consistency is crucial for maintaining the quality and reliability of your automation. Then flexibility. These plugins allow you to adapt Jenkins to a specific workflow and you are not limited to one solution. Then integration. Jenkins can be integrated with lot of tools, services and platforms through these plugins. For example, if you want to connect to a Jenkins with your version control system, then you can go for some source code management plugins like Git, Bitbucket, and so on. So Jenkins is a centralized tool, but with the help of these plugins, you will be able to integrate lot of services. Then monitoring. Some plugins that allows you to monitor the health and performance of your Jenkins instance and that will provide some insights of your build status, deployments, and that will help you to identify and address the issues more quickly. Then security. Security related plugins that will help you to enhance the protection of your Jenkins server and some security scanning. And finally, reporting. Plugins can generate detailed report of your automations on various aspects of your projects, such as code quality, test results, build history. These reports are valuable for tracking progress and making some informed decisions. In simple terms, Jenkins plugins are an additional tool you can add it to your Jenkins server to build the automation and CI/CD pipelines that suits your need. Let's quickly go through some of the plugins we mostly use for CI/CD automations. So here I have consolidated the plugin names along with the categories. For example, for source code management, you have some plugins called Git plugin, SVN plugin, and Mercurial plugin. These plugins will help you perform some specific task like fetching the changes from your remote repository, and based on that, you can perform some task. And for build and compilation, we have Maven, Gradle, and for containerization, we have set of plugins that are Docker plugin, Kubernetes plugin, OpenShift plugin. You can choose any of these plugins if you have a containerized environment to perform the task. And for Active Factory management, you have Active Factory plugin, Nexus Repository Manager. And for static code analysis, you have Checkstyle plugin, Findbugs, and SonarQube. And for test automation, you have JUnit, TestNG, and Selenium. For CI/CD, we have Pipeline plugin, Blue Ocean plugin, Delivery Pipeline plugins. And for notification reporting, we have email extension plugins, and we have Slack notifications, and we have a HTML publisher plugin. Also, we have a plugin for security and authentication, Matrix authorization strategy plugin, and we have Active Directory plugin and GitHub authentication plugin. So for monitoring and metrics, we have Prometheus and Influx DB plugin. And for cloud integration, we have Amazon EC2 plugin, Google Cloud Compute Engine, and Azure VM Agent plugins. For performance testing, we have JMeter and Load Runner. For version control and issue tracking, we have Bit-by-Get plugin and Jira plugin. For deployment release management, we have deployed the container plugin, you have a release plugin, and if you are going to deploy your application using some Ansible or Chef, then you can use those plugins as well. So you have a lot of plugins that will support to perform such tasks. And for workflow and orchestration, we have Pipeline DSL and Buildflow plugins. So these are just a few examples of plugins. You have a lot of Jenkins plugins available in the market. So let's see how to find the right plugins. So there is a website of Jenkins called plugins.jenkins.io where you can find all your plugins. Already it has 1800 plus plugins to support your task. Let's quickly see how we manage our plugins. So this is my Jenkins console. Already I have logged in with my DevOps admin, and here on the left side you can see the option called Manage Jenkins, and if you scroll down there will be an option called Plugins under System Configuration. Just click on this. Okay, this is the main page of plugins where you can see options called Updates, Available Plugins, Installed Plugins, Advanced Settings. Let me first go to this Advanced Settings. Here you have some limited options. If your organization is behind some HTTP proxy, then you can configure your proxy information over here so that you can install your plugins as per your need. Now, you will have other three options, that is updates, available plugins, installed plugins. On this installed plugins, you will see the list of plugins that is already installed on your Jenkins. Here you can see the list of plugins are available over here, and you can enable and disable it, and you can remove it. There are few plugins that cannot be removed, or that might be a dependency of other plugins. Now on this available plugins, you can see all the available plugins from the official plugins website. So on this box you can search your plugins. For example, if I'm going to create a new job for my automation, something like I want to build my Docker image and I want to push my Docker image to my repository, then I would need a Docker plugin. In that case, you can come to this option and search for the Docker. Here, we need to find the right plugin. Here you can see the name of the plugin and the category of it and the description along with when it is released. So how we decide the right plugin? So what you have to do is you need to know the complete information about the plugin. So here on this name, just right click and open link in new tab. It will take you to the official Jenkins plugin page. Similarly, you can do this for all the plugins. You need to explore a lot of plugins, then only you'll be familiar with all of this. Okay, so I have opened all these plugins informations, and this is a Docker, and this is a Docker Commons, and this is a Docker pipeline. All these links I have opened directly from the Jenkins console. Now we need to go through this document when it is released, how often they provide the update, and is it a trusted one, and what are the options it provides. On some cases, the option we are looking for will not be available on some specific plugin, but the same option will be available in different plugins. So you need to explore all these plugins and we need to decide based on that. So here you can see all these overviews and the configuration steps. Since it is a Docker, so there is a set of basic configuration for Docker, right? So if you want to integrate any plugins, then at least you should have a basic knowledge on it. So if you want to do something on Docker, then you should have some basic knowledge on what is Docker, how do we build the Docker image, how do we push it, all these things. Okay, this is how we configure the Docker options, Docker daemons. Now how do we configure it? If you install these plugins, these options will be enabled. Till then, these options will not be available for your Jenkins. You can get all these informations over here. Let me go to the other one, Docker Commons, and this is a summary of this plugins. And this is a Docker build step plugin. This plugin will help you to perform all these tasks. You can commit changes in a specific container. You can create new container from an image, create image, a lot of things. You can pull image from a repository. You can push image to a repository, remove containers, remove all containers. So it has a lot of things. So I think this is the right plugin for me to perform that task. So I'm going to use this one. Alright, this is how we choose a plugin. First, let me try with this plugin for my task. And here it supports build variables. And in order to configure, you need to set a Docker URL first. And for Docker pull, you can use these options to define your values like image, repository, tags, credentials. And for Docker push, you have to put all these values. Plugins will provide you uh, an option to configure in the form based. So it will be easy for you to just go through the description and you can put the values that you required. So I am okay with this plugin called Docker Build Step. So let me select that one. Similarly, you can go for other plugins as well if you want to install Ansible plugins, if you want to integrate Ant, Maven, you can follow the same. Now, after you have selected all the plugins you want to integrate, now here you will have an option called install. Just click on it. So this will do a small preparation, like it will check proxy or internet connectivity statuses, and if that is success, then it will start installing all the different plugins as well. These are just an options. If you enable this option, it will restart the Jenkins after this installation is completed. Alright, all these are success. Now again go to plugins. Now if you go to installed plugins, I can see the Docker build step. I have installed only this one, but additionally these Docker common plugins and API plugins are installed as a dependency. So we have gone through advanced settings, installed plugins and available plugins. And what will be there in the updates? Since we use these plugins from the community, we will have more updates, features and security related threats. So updating Jenkins plugin is also an important task to ensure that we have latest features, bug fixes and security updates. On these updates options, you can see all the updates available at the moment. And this is the version it is installed. You can go through this, and if you want to install everything, you can select all these options and you can update it. Or if you want to do specific update for a specific plugins, then you can just select that specific plugins and click on update. Okay, so how often we need to update our plugins? The frequency of updating plugins depends on several factors: the nature of the plugin and severity of the impact. If it is a security related vulnerability, then we have to update our system as soon as possible. If it is just a new feature update, then it's up to us to decide when to update that if you really want that feature. And if it is a compatibility related update, yes, your task may not work properly because of the incompatibility. On that case, we need to update our updates. If you have a bug fix or stability related updates, obviously it is also considered as a high impact. On that case, we need to update our plugins. Let me quickly create a job for my task, that is building a Docker image and pushing my new Docker image to my image repository. Application name is bus app and it is a freestyle project. Click on OK. Okay, now since it is a Docker image build, obviously I will have my code on some repository, and also I will have some Docker file, right? Obviously to build a Docker image. So I need to define all these things. So this is my GitHub account. This is the code repository I'm going to use, so that my code will be fetched into my Jenkins first. Then it will build a Docker image using this Docker file. So this is the first step for our Docker image build. Once the Docker image is built, then I need to push my Docker image to my image repository. For that, I use Docker Hub. This is the repository I'm going to use it for my Docker image push. Alright. So let me copy my repository. On this source code management, I'm going to select Git. This repository, I'm going to use my repository. And for credential, I will use my credential. Already I have added my credential over here. And which branch I need to use? Develop branch. Alright. So this is for source code management. And build triggers, as of now I'm going to manually trigger. So I will not choose any other options. And this is a build environment. On this I will use only delete workspace before build start. So I will have a fresh workspace. Okay, this is actual build step where we are going to perform the task. First step, I will use execute shell, just put ls star so that before building my image, it will list all the files that are available in the workspace. Alright. Next step, I'm going to use a Docker plugin. So we have installed a plugin called Docker Build Step. That plugin has enabled a functionality with this options on this build step, execute Docker command. So once you have selected, you have a more option in the pull down. Here you can choose the option based on your need. First, I need to build an image for my task. Here I'm going to use create build image. Once you have selected, you will have an option to define values for that specific task. So where is your Docker file? My Docker file is not under my workspace slash Docker. It will be directly under workspace because first it will fetch my remote repository. On the parent folder itself, my Docker file is there. It is not inside any of my folders. So I use directly the workspace and build number. We can see all these parameterized build in the next section. For now, I will use 3.1. This will be my Docker image version. There will be an advanced option. You can, if you want to customize anything, then yes, obviously you can go through all these options. Alright, the file name of my Docker file is not this one. It is a smaller case. Okay. So this is a step we have defined only for building the image. I need to add one more step to push my image to my image repository. Again, I will go with execute Docker command. Here I will select push image. Now it will ask you again the repository where you want to push the image. So here you can copy the Docker Hub repository and the tag 3.1. I will use the same one. So my Docker image will be built with the tag called 3.1 and the same will be pushed to image repository. And if you want to define your registry URLs, then yes, you can use it. Here I have not added my Docker Hub credential. I'm going to add it now. And let it be username with password. Provide your Docker Hub username and password and give some easily readable name ID over here. Okay, now if you click on it, you can see since I have provided the meaningful name Docker Hub, I can easily identify what credential it is. Okay, now on post build action, I don't want to perform anything, so I will leave it as and just click on apply and save. Before I trigger my build, I need to inform you that any plugin you install on top of your Jenkins, we need to do some set of configuration. Some plugins will not need much configuration, but some services will be needed. For example, Docker is a service level tool. So you need to install a Docker command, you need to start the service, then only you will be able to build the Docker image. All these things will be a part of Docker installation and configuration. If not, you will end up some issues. Before configuring anything, you have just installed a plugin. Let's trigger the build. Once I have triggered it, the initial job has triggered. Just click on this, go to console output. Here you can go through all these tasks. So the SEM step is done, and here the ls star has executed because that is the first step I have used using execute shell. I have put ls star, so it is listing all the files. So there is no problem with my SEM fetch. Alright, now the error is build step failed with exception URI was not specified. So this is what I was telling. Jenkins is not able to identify your Docker services. For this, we need to configure the Docker as an initial setup. So this is my Jenkins server. First, I don't have a Docker command at all. Let's install the Docker and do a basic configuration. Okay, so we have installed Docker, so I'm able to see the Docker command, but the normal users will not be able to run this Docker image. Only admin user would be able to perform any Docker image, Docker related commands. Since I am logged into a user called Selva, not on Jenkins, so let me switch over to Jenkins because I need to provide access to the user called Jenkins. Now open a group file, or you can use user mode command to add your Jenkins user to the group called Docker. And if you are confident and sure about editing the files, then open this group file and search for Docker group and add your user. Now if you use Jenkins, well, Jenkins will be part of Docker group. Now if you run Docker image, so let me open one more configuration file, and this is the service file where we need to add one more entry on this execute start -h and the socket name. If not, you will end up with more errors. Okay, I just saved the file and I'm going to restart my Docker and Jenkins. Before restarting Docker, let me run systemctl daemon reload. Then restart the Docker again. Now restart Jenkins. Okay. Now let's go to Jenkins console, and here, since I have restarted my Jenkins, I need to log in again. Go to manage Jenkins. Here under system, we need to define our Docker host. So here on this system, if you search for Docker, there will be an option to specify your Docker host. Here you need to specify your localhost socket. This is why I have added this socket. Once you have added, you can click on test connection. So now it is connected to the socket. Click on save. Now go back to our jobs that we have created recently and click on build now. And it has started. So let me open the console output. So it is listing all the files. Now it should go to the Docker image build stage. So the Docker first step has started. Jenkins is able to connect with the Docker daemon so that it is able to build the image. Now we are end up with an error while pushing the image. That is because the tag doesn't exist, which means the tag we have mentioned is not right. Let me click on configure job and go through the option. So the problem is here I need to specify the Docker image as well. I didn't mention it. These plugins will help you to configure your values in the form based. So we need to define the proper values. Let me re-trigger the build and click on the console output. Now again we are end up with a new error. This is not related to tag but the issue with the access. So now again go back to the configuration page. Now the issue was with the access not related to the tag. Now we need to focus only on the access part. So here on the image and tag, this is perfect. Now we need to find out the credential what I have used. So I have used Docker Hub. This is fine. Okay, so I have missed to specify my registry URL. By default, it will use this repository, but still it is failed to push my image. So I will specify my image repository manually. Click on save and re-trigger the build. Click on the console output. So the image is successfully tagged to this version and it is trying to pushing the image, and finally it is success. So we have successfully installed a plugin to build our Docker image and push it to image repository. This is what our request for now. So similarly, we need to explore more plugins based on our requirement to perform the automation. For my task, I have chosen the plugin called Docker Build Step. Similarly, I had more plugins, but I have chosen one. Why? Because the plugin I choose, it should support my task. On some plugins, I will not have much options. So we need to choose the right plugin. We need to be familiar with these configurations. So this is why we use plugins on our Jenkins to integrate multiple tools and services to perform our automations. On Jenkins, whenever we create any jobs, we must decide and configure how do we want that particular jobs to be triggered. Like, are we going to run the jobs manually or the job should be triggered automatically based on time intervals or based on any events from your remote repository. So let's quickly see those options. On every job, there must be an option called build triggers, where you can find similar options. Even you could see more options if you install more plugins. Out of these options, in real time, we primarily used build after other projects are build periodically, or some kind of SCM polling. Let me quickly go through these options. The first option is trigger build remotely, which means you may have some scripts on your server or any other repository that will send a request to this Jenkins through HTTP or HTTPS protocol. The second option is build after other projects are built, which means this job will be built after any other jobs are successfully completed or failed based on the success status. So this will come under downstream jobs, and we will discuss this topic in the next video. The third option is build periodically. Build periodically is nothing but this job will be triggered based on some specific time, simply like a cron job schedule. For example, if I want this job to be triggered for every minute or every hour, then we have to enable this option and we need to specify the time. For example, if I want to run this job to be triggered for every minute, then I must define the values. So on cron job, there will be a default 5 values to specify your minute, then hour, then day of the month, which is 1 to 31, then month 1 to 12, and finally day of the week. And even if you specify any values over here, then it will quickly tell you when it has run and when it is going to be run. This is scheduling the jobs for automated builds. Then we have two more options. That is because I have installed a Git plugin with the help of that plugin, I have got these options. So GitHub hook trigger for Git SCM polling. And one more option I have, that is poll SCM. So actual difference of build periodically and poll SCM is build periodically doesn't care about anything. It will keep on run the job based on the time period you have given. It doesn't know the remote repository or your job has any new changes or not. Simply it will run your job for the specified time period. If I go with poll SCM, it specifies some time period like every minute. On that case, it will go and check your SCM, but it will not run. Only if there is a change, then only the job will be triggered. If you want to schedule your job to be run periodically, either you can go with build periodically or poll ACM. Build periodically is the inbuilt scheduling option, not this poll ACM. This has come from my Git plugin. So GitHub hook trigger for Git SCM polling. SCM polling is nothing but whenever there is a changes happened on your remote repository. For example, this is my Git repository where if I'm making any changes, then the event will be notified to your Jenkins. But if I enable build periodically is go and check from the Jenkins to your remote repository. If I enable any hook trigger, then your remote repository will send the events to the Jenkins. So how do I enable this hook trigger? Simple. Go to your remote repository. There should be an option to specify a web hook trigger. If I go to my settings on my remote repository, there is an option called webhooks. Here you can add a webhook. But the problem here is my Jenkins is on my local host, but I am using GitHub that is on the public repository. In order to give a request from this public repository to my local host, I must have some API or endpoint that should be communicated with HTTP. If not, you cannot communicate to a Jenkins. If I didn't select any of these build triggers, then that job will be considered for manual build. Let me select this build periodically and a scheduling for every minute I want this job to be running. Just click on this apply. Here, if you see, my build steps are to build Docker image, the image to my Docker Hub. Apply and save. Let's wait for a minute. As of now, I have 6 builds in the history. There is a job automatically have started. Click on this job and go to console output. So it is building my Docker image and pushing the image to my Docker Hub, and it is completed successfully. Go back to the job, and if you see, before this job has completed, the other job has started. That is because I have scheduled the job for every minute. So it is not a good idea to run the job every minute. It should be either 30 minutes or 1 hour based on your changes happens on your remote repository, not every minute. Let me cancel this one. Let me go back and configure the job again to show you the other option called poll SEO. Let me remove this and click on poll SEM, and again I'm going to use the same every minute. Click on apply and save. So I have enabled the poll SEM and I have given for every minute, but still the job has not started because there is no new changes on my Git repository. So I have already have my repository on my local, and I have checked out to the branch develop, and these are the files. And this is my remote repository. I'm going to make a small change just to show you the poll ACM trigger. Simply I open this file, just delete the line, committed my change. Let me push my change to my remote branch. As soon as I have pushed my change to the remote branch, you can see there is a new job scheduled, that is 10. Just click on this, go to console output. You can go through this logs. Here you can see the message I have given while committing the change, remote hash. So poll ACM, and this is the difference of scheduling the build. Either you can go with build periodically or you can go with poll ACM. So the job is completed and it won't run again until there is a change on my remote repository. This job will not be. So we need to decide which kind of option will be suit for our job. What is parameterized builds in Jenkins? These parameterized builds is very similar to a variable concept in programming language. So on a programming language, we define a variable by getting some user input so that these variables can be reused throughout your programming, or you can refer in your other programming as well. Similarly, parameterized builds in Jenkins also will help you to get some kind of input as a variable, and that can be used throughout your Jenkins jobs. So how do we make our Jenkins job as a parameterized build? There must be an option called this project is parameterized on general section. If you enable this, automatically the particular job will be a parameterized build. Now we need to add a parameter because this will support multiple parameters. It can be a Boolean parameter, or it can be a choice, or it can be a credentials, or it can be a file, multi-line, password, run, and string. These many type of parameter or variable Jenkins will support. For example, if I go with Boolean parameter, so in any parameter we need to define a name to store the value of that particular parameter. For example, since it is a Boolean parameter, it can have only two values, either it might be a true or false. If you are not sure about any parameter, just click on this question mark on the right side. It will give you a clear description. So since I have selected Boolean parameters, the value of this name should be either true or false. Okay, let me give some name first. Reboot status. So this is the parameter name I'm going to give, and you will have some option. If you enable it, will be set as a default. You can give some description. So here we have added only one parameter type called Boolean. These parameter can be reused throughout your Jenkins job. So let me go to build step, and here simply I can put, this is a simple shell scripting where I have mentioned to echo the variable name called reboot underscore status, and this is the exact name we need to refer. Just click on apply, and if you see the job, this has been changed from build to build with parameter, which means this particular job is a parameterized build. If you click on this build, it will prompt you to enter the value. Since this is a Boolean, you need to either select or you can disable it. If you select, it will become true. If you didn't select, then that will become false, because it is a Boolean parameter. So let me remove this and let me give build. So build is success. Just click on the build, go to console output. Here if you see, I have given the command echo to print the variable. It is printed as false because I have not selected the tick mark on the option. Let me go back to the same build and we'll configure to use a different parameter now. You can have multiple parameterized options. Okay, let me remove this boolean parameter for now. And you can have choice parameters. Okay, here I have selected the choice parameter and my variable name is server name, and the choices are Ansible 1, Ansible 2, Chef 1. Let's go to execute shell. Either you can do patching or you can do restart or you can do anything based on your automations. Simply, I will give the server name. Apply, save. Click on build with parameter. Here on server name, you have multiple choices you can select. For example, if this particular job is kind of a patching job or reboot, then select that particular server and just click on build. Based on the build step, this job will start perform the task. I have selected Ansible 2. Okay, now the job number is 16. Click on it and go to console output. And here if you see, the server name printed as Ansible 2 because we have selected Ansible 2 as a choice. So similarly, we can configure n number of parameters that suits your job. Here I have a job called bus app docker image. Here I have multiple stages. The first would be check out my Git remote repository, that is from github.com. From there, I have multiple steps. On build step, one is just an execute shell. This will print list of files what is checked out on my local directory. Then I have execute docker command. This will build an image from the docker file and it will tag the docker image as busapp:2.1. Once the image is built, then I have to push my image to my Docker Hub repository. For that as well, I am using the tag what is mentioned here. Here I have mentioned in two places as a static value. Here I am going to use a parameterized build. For that, I am going to enable the parameterized option. Based on the job, you can decide which parameter will be best for you. As per this job, I can go for choice parameter or string parameter. If I give choice parameter, the values will be defined earlier. If I use string parameter, then user has to type the value in the text box. So first I will show you with choice parameter. So this is the variable name. Here I can give some choices. Then we need to specify this variable name wherever you want. So it will print what version we have selected. Here we can use variable. Here too. Just click on apply, save. Now build with parameter. Since we have selected the choice parameter, all the values we have defined on the configuration, it is listed over here. Here you can select any of your version. Just click on build. So the build has started. Now the build number is 11. It is going on. Click on the build. Go to console output. Here on the build step, the first one was execute shell, where I have listed all the files. Then I have given the echo command to display the version I have selected. So it is perfectly accepted the value as 3.1. And this is the Docker build stage. Here successfully the Docker image is built and it is tagged as 3.1 and it is pushing the image as 3.1. So this is how we use parameterized build. Let me quickly change the parameterized type from choice to string parameter. The name I will give docker underscore version itself, and default let it be 3.0. If the user is not typed any value, it will consider as a 3.0 is the default value. Just click on apply, save, build with parameter. Here a text box prompting for the version. If you didn't type anything, this is the default value, will be set to docker version, or you can change it 3.1 or 3.2, anything. Here as well I will give 3.1. Click on build, and this time the build number is 12. Click on it, go to console output, and let's wait for the build step to start. So on 3 places we have defined the variables. One is execute shell and docker image and docker push. So it is checking out my repository, and here is the first stage, that is docker version. It accepted the value as 3.1. It started building my docker image and it is pushing the image right now to Docker Hub. It's done. So this is how we create parameterized build on Jenkins, which means we are using some kind of variables and we are referring into our jobs. If you have multiple jobs that has to be triggered sequentially, then we can use an approach called upstream jobs or downstream jobs. If you see this picture, you have multiple jobs, upstream jobs, downstream job 1, job 2, job 3. So an upstream job is configured in such a way that it will trigger the other projects, which are job 1, job 2, job 3 as a downstream, based on the status of the upstream job. If the job is success, then job 1 will be triggered. Also, if the job is success, the job 2 also will be triggered. So here, these 2 jobs will be triggered based on the success state of upstream job. If the upstream job is failed, then the job 3 will be triggered. Similarly, we can configure multiple jobs to be run sequentially based on the status. If any job is configured to be triggered after a particular job, then that job will be triggered as a downstream job. This diagram will give you more clarity. So I have one job, something like a triggered job called build app, and this build app will be triggering the other downstream jobs. And if the build core is success, then this particular job is triggering the other jobs. But in order to create such approach, we should have the understanding our workflow. What is our application? How do we create the Docker images, or how do we bundle our packages, or where is it stored? How do we check out the package, and how do we deploy the packages on the target environment? The target environment might be a server or some containerized environment. So all these workflow should be very clear. Then only we can configure this kind of approach. To make it clear, I am going to configure a few jobs with upstream and downstream model. So this is my workflow where my developers will be writing the code to a GitHub repository, and this particular GitHub used for my app called Bus app. So my developers will be writing their code to this GitHub repository on the branch called develop. And my target is on containerized environment, that is a Kubernetes. So for Kubernetes, obviously we would need a Docker image to deploy application. Once the developer committed the code on the develop branch, I need to build my Docker image. Then that should be pushed to my Docker Hub repository. That repository can be used to deploy my application on Kubernetes. So these many stages are involved to have this complete workflow. So I'm going to have a Docker image job that will be used for building my Docker image and pushing my Docker image to Docker Hub. The other job would be to deploy my application on Kubernetes. In order to build my Docker image, I would need a version to tag my Docker image. That version can be getted from this trigger job. So already I have created a Docker image job, also deploy Kubernetes. Let me go through this first. Click on configure. So this job is mainly used for Docker image build and Docker push. In order to build a Docker image, I would need a Docker version. So I have enabled this parameterized option to get the Docker version input from the user. And I have set a default value as 3.0. And my Docker images and other resource files are available on this GitHub repository. And this is a credential I will need to pull my GitHub. And this is the branch that is developed. On the build steps, I have simply created one execute shell. Simply it will list the files and it will print the Docker version that user being provided. Then the next stage would be to create a Docker build, to create the Docker image. And this is the Docker image tag. Once the Docker image is built, then immediately the image will be pushed to my Docker Hub along with a tag. That's all we have in this particular Docker image job. On the deployment job, again, I have used the same Docker version parameterized option, because in order to deploy my application on Kubernetes, I would need what image to be deployed and what version. Again, I would need Docker version. Here I have defined some default value. And this is the build step for deployment. So I have exported my kubeconfig to manage my Kubernetes cluster. And again, I have just printed the Docker version. Then I will get the status of the part. And this application is hosted on default namespace. And this is the command I'll be using to deploy my application called bus app along with this Docker image. Let's go and create a triggered job as an upstream job. Click on new item, bus app build, let it be freestyle project, click on OK. Enable this option to get the input from the user, and we will select string parameter and it should be Docker version. Just set any values as a default. Now, since this is my trigger build, now how do we configure this trigger build as an upstream and Docker stage as a downstream? The options are very simple. Since this is my upstream job, then I have to select my downstream job. On build trigger, there is an option called build after other projects are built. If you enable this option, this will ask you to enter the job. If I select any job over here, then the job you have selected will be the upstream job and this bus app build will be downstream job. And based on the status, if it is stable, if it is unstable, if it is failed, or if it is aborted, based on the status of the job will be triggered automatically. So this option should be selected if this particular job is a downstream job. But in my case, the bus app build should be an upstream job. So I need to select a downstream job. For that, on the post build action, you can see an option called trigger build parameters after other build. But for that, we need to install a plugin. Let me go to my Jenkins. On Manage Jenkins, go to Plugins. On the available plugins, search for Parameterized Trigger. So click on this. and install. I will tell you why you would need this parameterized trigger. So it is installed. Just save this page and just refresh it and again configure the page. On post build actions, we can see an option called trigger parameterized build on other projects. And why do we need this option? Because for my Kubernetes deployment, I need the input of the Docker image version. Then only it can be deployed. So that version is a parameterized variable. So I need to pass that variable from this job to the other job. For that only I use this option called trigger parameterized build on other projects. And this is the option can be used as a downstream jobs. Or even you have one more option called trigger build on other projects. This option also can be used for your downstream jobs, but this will not pass your environment variables. That is why I go with the other option, trigger parameterized build on other projects. If I select this one, it will ask you to enter the downstream jobs. Okay, here just type the job names. It will list you all the jobs. Here I will select bus app, the Docker image. This is going to be my downstream job for the bus app build. It will accept multiple jobs, so it has come with comma, but it will not. That is why I am getting this warning. Just remove this comma and trigger when build is stable. If you select this option, parameters will not be passed to the other job, but I need that parameter. So I will select this one, and here current build parameters. Any parameters are available on this job will be passed to this downstream jobs. That is why I select this option. That's it. So we have created a trigger job. Through this we'll get an Docker version input, and that will be passed to the other job, that is downstream jobs. So these two things are done now. Okay. Now we need to go to Docker stage or Kubernetes stage to configure upstream or downstream jobs. Save this configuration. So immediately once you have saved the option, here you can see the downstream projects. If you have multiple downstream projects, all these projects will be available here. Even if you have multiple downstream jobs that has to be triggered sequentially, then again go to configure. On this trigger parameters build on other projects, you can add more trigger. For example, if I select anything, something like create environment, just for an example, and I have not passed any parameter, just click on apply, save, and if you see, it will show you all the downstream projects. So I have created this bus app create environment as a dummy downstream projects. Let it be now. Okay, let's go to the Docker image configuration. Click on configure. So this is already a parameterized job. Now on the post build actions, I'm going to select trigger parameters build on other projects to select my downstream job, that is deployment. So here again search for bus app, deploy Kubernetes, remove this comma. Now obviously only if it is success, then I want this deployment should be triggered, and I would need build parameter. Click on save. Now if you see this Docker image, you have an upstream job and you have a downstream job, because this particular job is in middle of these two jobs. Now if you go to deploy Kubernetes, refresh the page, here you can see only the upstream jobs. because this particular Kubernetes deployment is the last stage. So it is clear. So this is a builder trigger, then Docker image stage, then finally it will deploy on my Kubernetes. If I click my build with parameter, it will ask you to enter the Docker version. Here you can put your preferred value and click on build. Once you have started the build, this will trigger all the build immediately, but we cannot view the workflow. For that, we need to install one more plugin for pipeline view. Here on plugins, if you search for view, it is a lot of plugins are available, but I would prefer to use delivery pipeline. This is the one. Even you have more like Ocean Blue, build pipeline, still you have more. It's up to you. Click on install. Okay, the plugin is installed, and this plugin is useful only to view your workflow in a visualization. In order to create that pipeline view, just go to your main dashboard and click on this new view. Here you can see more options: delivery pipeline view, list view, my view, and delivery pipeline view for Jenkins pipelines. And these options have enabled because of that plugin I have installed. So click on this delivery pipeline view and give some name and create. Immediately it will give you the settings. You can play with these settings. Here on this components, just click on add. Just give some name. So trigger, and here you need to select the initial job. Here it would be bus app build. So this is my trigger build. And final job is not required because on the initial job itself we have configured our upstream and downstream model approach. So automatically that will be fetched. So just click on OK. Now if you see this bus app view, you can get the visualization. So this is my trigger job. Then it will trigger my sequential jobs, that is bus app Docker image and bus app create environment. But this one I have simply created. It has no downstream job. So immediately bus app Docker image, if it is success, then it will trigger the deploy Kubernetes job. So this is how we create upstream, downstream jobs on Jenkins for a complete automated workflow. Same jobs can be created with pipeline scripts. That is a single file called Jenkins file that can be used to create this kind of multiple jobs in a single file. What is pipeline and why do we use that? An easy way to manage your complete workflow when you have multiple jobs to be executed. For that, we use this pipeline scripts. This script will be written in a single file called Jenkins file. It will be your blueprint to manage your entire workflow automation that is used for your CI/CD. In order to write this Jenkins file, we have two types of pipeline syntax. One is scripted and other one is declarative. I would say both of these two syntax is not a complex, but scripted syntax would need a programming language called Groovy. So here is the difference between these scripted and declarative. Both syntax will have a small changes in the syntax format. Also, the scripted will be needed a Groovy knowledge, and it can be used for more advanced scripting capabilities and high flexibility. Since it is required a Groovy programming knowledge, it is quite difficult to start for the beginners. On the other end, we have a declarative syntax. It is very easy to start and it has a predefined structure. Also, we can use some kind of a generator that is inbuilt with Jenkins to write the pipeline syntax. Let's talk about the syntax. So the declarative and scripted will not have much difference in the syntax, only a small variations. The declarative will start with pipeline and then braces, but the scripted will start with node. And if you see, you will have multiple stages. So both the syntax will not have much difference. But the scripted syntax will be used for advanced approach if you are good in writing groovy programming language. Let's take an example. How do we write a Jenkins pipeline from scratch? Here I have opened a notepad and written a pipeline braces. From this syntax, you must know that this is a declarative syntax. In order to write pipelines, we should have knowledge on our complete workflow of our CI/CD. If not, it is not easy to write any pipelines. Here is an example of my CI/CD workflow where I have a GitHub repository for my app called Bus App, where I have different branches: develop, QA, master, where developers will be writing their code to the respective branches, and my target environment are on Kubernetes. So the respected branches will be deployed to the respected environment. So this is my complete workflow. While writing the Jenkins file, we would need lot of inputs and knowledge on each stages. For example, in order to access my GitHub, I would need what is my GitHub repository. Do I need a credential to fetch the GitHub? If I want to check out develop branch, what command should I use? So I should have a knowledge on that particular stage. Now, after you have checked out your source code management from GitHub or Bitbucket, then the next stage would be depend on your project. Here I am using on my Kubernetes, so I would need to build a Docker image. For that, I should have a knowledge on Docker. How do we build a Docker image? What is the command I have to use? Do I have a Docker file? And how do I push my Docker image to my Docker repository? Is the Docker repository is a private repository or any public repository? Is it a Docker Hub or is it a AWS ECR? And finally, once you have a Docker image, then how do I pull the Docker image and how do I deploy it in Kubernetes? Do I have a YAML file to manage my application? Is it a deployment or is it a STS? So all these knowledge should have in order to create a Jenkins file. So let's start with a basics. Now we understand that I have a stages. So I have a trigger job that will be used to trigger my dependent stages. So I have a Docker stages where I need to build my Docker image, then I need to push my Docker image. So here we have a 2 stages. Then finally, I have a Kubernetes stage where I need to deploy my application. So SEM to check out the code. Then on Docker, we have 2 stages. On Kubernetes deployment, we have 1 stage. So totally we have 4 stages. You may have multiple stages on your workflow. For example, if it is a Java based application, then we need to build the application using some Maven command or Ant or anything. For that, we need to add 1 more stage. Or you may have a unit test. For that, we need to add 1 more stage. So even if you want to add any stages, irrespective of it is a Maven or unit test, we should have a knowledge on how do we clean the Maven package, how do we build the Maven package. Only if you know all these details, then you create a stages easily. Even if you're a beginner, doesn't know how to create from a scratch, I will tell you how do I get help from generator. So let's go to Jenkins. Alright, this is my Jenkins console. Let's create a job. Bus App pipeline. Here we need to select the option called pipeline. Click on this and OK. Just scroll down. Let's talk about these options later because it is anyway available in every jobs. Even it is a freestyle jobs, you will have all these options. It is up to us to decide what option need to be selected. Directly we'll go to the pipeline step. Here you have 2 options. One is pipeline script. This option will be used to directly type the syntax on this box. If not, you can use pipeline script from SEM, which means you can create a Jenkins file and put it on your source code management repository or on GitHub or Bitbucket anywhere and just use that URL over here. So this pipeline job will be fetched automatically your GitHub repository and use that Jenkins file. In this case, I'm going to use the direct option. I'm going to write all my syntax over here from scratch. So once you are fine with your complete workflow, we need to decide which pipeline syntax we are going to use. Is it scripted or declarative? I have decided to go with declarative. So we'll start with pipeline open brace and close brace. Here, what are the things we need to add? Let's talk about that. If you are a beginner, doesn't know about syntax, there is an option here, pipeline syntax. Just open this. This is inbuilt feature provided by Jenkins. Here you can go through this all document. Okay, here two options will be very useful to generate your syntax: snippet generator and declarative directive generator. First, we'll talk about declarative directive generator. You will have a clear description and all the documents over here. You can go through it. Now, we'll straight away go to this option. Here you have agent, you have an option to specify environment, input matrix. Let's take one example. If I select this agent and you have an option to select any label none. If I select any, this particular Jenkins job can be run on any available agent. So once you have selected this option, just click on this generate. It will give you the syntax. Just copy this and paste it in your pipeline. That's it. It's very straightforward. For example, if I go with label, I can give, for example, if I have a slave, Docker slave, or I may have a server slave, or I may have Kubernetes slave, I can give the label. Now you got the syntax. Just copy this and paste it over here. This is how we built our Jenkins file from the scratch. Okay, this section is for agent. Similarly, you have multiple section. You can define the environment. You can define input section. You can define stage. You can define stages. You can define tools. Okay. Here we'll use some of the feature. One is agent, and I will use environment because I need to export my kube configuration in order to manage my Kubernetes cluster. That will be used to deploy my application. So I will use this environment and I will use stages. Let me use the environment first. Here add, you can give something config and you can give the value. My kube config file is in /temp. Simply give and generate it. So it will give you the syntax. Just copy this and paste it in agent section. Instead of label, I don't have any label to specify, so I will simply delete this and I will put it any, agent any. Now I will give environment. You can define multiple environment if you have any. These are environment variables. If you have a AWS secret access key or anything, then you can define it over here. Now, after these environments, we can go for stages. Here, if you go to stages, you can add multiple stages over here. For example, if I give checkout, this stage will contain steps. This step is a parallel step or sequential step or matrix. It's up to us. If you have stages to be run after the previous stages, then we should go with normal stage. If you want to run a parallel stages, then we have to go with parallel. So these are different kind of approach. Let me go with steps. So now I got a stage for checkout. And here I don't have any steps to be performed. Okay. That is fine. We'll add it later. First, prepare the proper syntax. Then we'll improvise it later. Okay. Here I have stages. So started with pipeline, then agent, on which agent I need to run this job. Then if you have multiple environment variables, then define it. Then we will have a stage sections. Okay. On these stages, you can define multiple stage. This is the first stage will be used for checkout. Still, if you have more, then you can just keep on copy this and paste it. Now, let's create the stages with the steps. So this is the first step. I'm going to check out my SEM. Here on these steps, we need to define the steps. How do I? I'm going to check out my stage. Git checkout branch, git merge or anything. We need to add over here. So how do I add it? Again, go to the generator. Till now we have used declarative directive generator, which means the main syntax. We have got it from the declarative generator. Now, if you want to generate the steps, we need to use a snippet generator. Through this generator, we can create all the steps. For example, here you have a pull down option, and here you can have more options like you can manage Git, you can manage errors, you can manage build jobs, archive, artifactory, libraries. You have a lot of options will be supported by Jenkins by default. So we need to find, do we have any step that is suitable for us? Since the first stage is checkout, I need to check the option something similar to Git. Here I already have a Git. So just select this Git. Now it will prompt you to enter further options like GitHub repository, branch name, and if you have any credentials that will be fetched from your Jenkins credentials, just you need to select it. Okay. Here I am going to use my bus app repository. And which branch I need to check out? It is developed. It is just a user form. It is easy to provide these input and generate the syntax. If you have credentials, then you can use it. If it is a public repository, we will not need this credential. Disable these options, just generate it. You got the step for checkout. Now here just paste it. So you got your step for checkout. Next step is Docker. On Docker I have two stages, Docker build and Docker push. So here I will change the name like Docker build. Now on these steps, again let's go to syntax and try to find anything related to Docker. Here I don't have anything for Docker. So the problem here is some plugins will give you these kind of steps. Some will not be available. On that case, we need to use the actual command to manage your job. Since it is a Docker, I can use Docker build command. If I want to push Docker image, then I can use Docker push. Alright. If you don't have anything, then obviously we have to use the raw command. In order to run the raw command, you have to use sh. Even if you go to snippet and if you check shell or something, yeah, here you can write the command. And version. Here I am going to call environment variable. I am going to get the user input while running the job, because many places I need to define this Docker version, so I will prefer to use as an environment variable. So this is a general command to build a Docker image. Now click on generate. It will give you the command. You just copy and paste it over here. Now the other step is Docker push. In order to push my Docker images, I need my credential as well. Already I have provided my credentials in Jenkins itself, so it will be easy for me to use it. So on these steps, again, in order to push Docker images, we need to use the command docker push and the image name along with the tag. So just copy this and paste it over here. In order to push this, I would need credentials. For that, we need to use the credential bindings. Then the credential will be automatically used over here. In Docker, we can use the command called docker login -u, and you can specify the username to log into a Docker Hub registry. So I'm going to use that syntax as well. Before login, I need to get the credentials and assign into a variable so that I can use my username as a variable over here. So here you can see something called with credentials. This option will be used to bind your credentials as a variable. So click on this add, and here it will ask you the type of bindings. Here I will go with username and password because Docker Hub required a username and password. Separated in the sense the username will be assigned to one variable and the other password will be assigned to a different variable. So this is the variable name. Here I am going to use docker un username, and the password variable will be stored in docker pwd. And which credential I should bind it to this variable, I need to select over here. Then click on generate. So this is the with credential. Copy and paste it above this step, because before pushing I should have my credentials under these steps. Now here you have a sum block because you got your variables. Now we can use that with sh and some command to log in. Here I can use docker login -u and docker run and -p docker pwd. So here my docker login will be established with the username and password. Then I can push my Docker image. So this is one step, Docker push. Now still I have one more step to deploy my application. So I will just copy one stage. Here you can add it. Just align these lines to not get confused. So this is my final stage, that is for Kubernetes deploy. Again, for this step, just check, do you have any options available to deploy the application? Something like kubectl or Kubernetes or anything. So we don't have anything, so obviously we have to use the command with sh. So on sh, give the command you need it. kubectl get pods and kubectl set image deployment bus app, and let me copy this command. Okay, I'll add it over here. So on this tag already I am about to get the input from the user itself while running the Jenkins pipeline. Just click on generate. I got your commands. Just copy this and put it over here. If you see, when I give multiple commands. It is already got 3 quotes and it has given all the commands over here. So it is very easy. So that's all. I have made the Jenkins file. Let's run this one and we'll see if you have any issues and we'll troubleshoot it. Now we have used this Docker version everywhere. So we need to enable the parameterized build. Let it be default to 1. That's it. Let's apply this one. Click on save. Okay. So bus app pipeline has created now. Just click on this build with parameter. Here you can give your Docker image. The first job has started. Since it is a pipeline, it will give you a nice view of your pipeline. So our job has failed. Let's click on this, go to console output and we'll troubleshoot the issue. So this is a syntax error. Somewhere I have missed to specify the close parenthesis. So configure it, go to the script, copy this, paste it in a notepad and we'll verify the syntax. So this may open and this is close. This is on 40th line. Okay. So here we have started with one open braces and it will be end on the last line. For this environment we have opened here and we have closed it. For stages we have opened here and it should be closed here. Okay. So now we'll see each steps. For this step it is opened over here. Okay, here we have missed one step to close it. This one opened, closed here. This one opened here and it is closed. This one opened. Okay, here again I need to add closing. All right. Save, run it again. So the checkout stage has started. The first step has completed successfully, but the Docker build has failed. Because of that, all the stages have failed. Somewhere we did some mistakes. Let's check the log again. Console output. So this is the command I have used directly and it requires some additional argument. So this command might not be right. Okay, click on configure. Okay. Here I need to specify the Docker file name, or you can just put dot. Click on apply, save, build it again with the image you want. So this is how we keep on write the Jenkins file. We'll improvise it from there. Okay, now the Docker build has completed successfully, but the Docker push has failed. Again, go to console output. So the Docker login has some issue. So go to configure and check the syntax. Here we can try different syntax. Also, we'll remove this sudo. So I have corrected the syntax now because I have written this in a notepad. If you use any Visual Studio or something, it will give you the proper alignment, so you will not make any mistakes. Okay, so now all the stages been completed successfully. Let's go to the Jenkins file again. So these are the stages. If you are very beginner, you can use this pipeline syntax generator. This will help you easily with the user form based. You can just enter your input and you can create the steps. What is Jenkins distributed architecture? As the name says, this architecture will help us to distribute the build and deployment loads across multiple Jenkins nodes. Here, you will have a Jenkins master, and this is going to be the main server that will manage the entire build system. It will schedule the jobs, it will monitor the jobs and manage the build end-to-end job management. On the other end, you will have multiple Jenkins slave nodes, or you can call it as a Jenkins agents. These machines that will execute the build jobs. And these agents can be set up on different servers, like it might be a virtual machine or physical machines or containers, even it is a Docker container or on Kubernetes pods. So they will connect to the master to get instructions and report back the status of the build. For example, on Jenkins master, you may have a different jobs, job 1, job 2, job 3 and many other. Based on the project requirement, we can have multiple slaves. For example, if job 1 is a kind of a job that will run only on Linux, on that case, we can build or set up a Linux agent. If the job 2 is a kind of job that will run only on Windows machines, on that case, we can build a Windows agent. This is where the Jenkins distributed architecture will help us to schedule or distribute the load across multiple nodes. So this is my Jenkins console where I am going to add a new Jenkins agent or Jenkins slave. In order to launch a Jenkins slave node, Jenkins will support three kind of launching method. One is through SSH, and the other one is through administrative account, and the other one is Java Web Start. So on your agent, if you have any of these kind of support, then you can connect that particular agent with your Jenkins master. For example, if I have a Linux machine, then I can go with SSH launching method. If I have a Windows machine, I can go with administrative account. So these are different ways how do we connect or how do we launch our agent from the Jenkins master. So I have a Jenkins slave 1 that is installed with Ubuntu 20. Since it is a Linux slave, I will prefer to go with SSH connection. So first thing, to set up this Jenkins slave, we should have a connectivity between master node to my slave node. Then we need to configure a SSH key, and that has to be deployed on the slave node so that my master will be able to make a connection to the slave node through SSH without passwordless authentication. Then finally, I need to install a Java package because Jenkins is written on Java. So Java is a dependency for Jenkins slave as well. Already I have a connection between master and slave. Alright, now we'll configure the SSH key. Since we are going to make the connection from Jenkins master 1 to slave 1, we need to create SSH key from the master. Alright, already I have logged in with the user called Jenkins, and I need to create a Jenkins user on slave as well. Let me create a user called Jenkins on slave. Alright, now we have Jenkins user on both master 1 and slave 1. Now I will create the SSH key from the master 1 using the command called shkeygen. Now under SSH directory you will have two files. One is public key and other one is a private key, and we need to copy this public key content to the slave in the file name called authorized keys, or you can use the command shcopy id. This will copy the public key directly to your slave node. We need to specify the username, where do you want to deploy this key, and the target address, that is our slave node IP. It's prompting me to enter the Jenkins user password. That's it. The key is added to slave. Let's check the connection between master to slave using the SSH command. As we have deployed the SSH key, the password should not be asked. Perfect. We have logged into Jenkins slave, which means the SSH key deployment is success. Now, on the slave, we need to install the Java package. Using apt command, search for the package called openjdk and find the version which are available on your repository. Okay, here I have openjdk 8, 21, 17, 16. We have more number of versions, so I will go with 17, not too lower or higher versions. Apt get install package name. Alright, after the installation is completed, check the installed Java version using Java command. So OpenJDK version 17 is installed. Let's go to Jenkins console and we'll add a new slave node. So this is my Jenkins console. Go to manage Jenkins and there will be an option called nodes to manage. So click on this node. So this is the built-in node, that is our Jenkins master. If you add any additional node, it will be listed over here. In order to manage your nodes, there will be in settings. We can configure the node. Let's go back to nodes. Let me add new node. On this node name, you can give any meaningful name for your node. Slave 1. And click on this permanent agent. Create. This is the page where you configure your node. So this is the name you have provided, and here you can specify any description and number of executors. And this executor is nothing but the number of jobs can be scheduled to this node. And this is based on the CPU cores. If you have a 4 core, then you can define the executor as 4. Even if you click on this question mark, it will give you the detailed informations. Let it be 1 for now. And remote root directory. I have created the user called Jenkins on slave. So my user home directory would be under home. If you have anything different, just provide your home directory so that when you launch the agent, it will look for the SSH key under this home directory. The next one is labels. If this node can be scheduled for multiple reasons, for example, this node can be assigned only for specific application called iMedia or any other applications, or if it is specifically for environment, something like development, then you can specify the label called development, because these labels will be used when you scheduling jobs. For example, I will give iMedia because this node is dedicatedly I am going to assign only for iMedia jobs. Now the usage type. This is another important option. How do you want this launch to be behaved? For example, I have two options. One is use this node as much as possible. The other one is only build job with label expression matching this node. If I go with use this node as much as possible, all my agents which are configured with use this node as much as possible, then all these slaves will be available all the time. So the jobs will be scheduled to any available nodes. The second option is only build jobs with label expression matching this node. On this case, this particular node will be launched only when a job matching with this label. Until then, this node will not be launched or used. The other option is launch method. How do you launch this node? Launch agent by connecting to the controller, launch agent via execution of command on the controller, and launch agents via SSH. And as we planned, I am going to use this launch agent via SSH. Now we need to provide the host name or host IP. I will go with host IP. This is my slave node IP. Credentials. How do we connect this master to slave? Alright. Already we have deployed our SSH key, but still we need to provide the private key. For that, I need to add a credential. Click on add, then Jenkins. On this kind, I will go with SH username with private key. Here on this ID, you can give some meaningful name. Okay, here on username, we need to specify the exact username to make the SSH connection. And here on this private key, you can add the private key that is generated. Just copy this private key and paste it on this form. That's it. If you have passphrase while generating the key, just provide the value. If not, just click on add. Now host key verification strategy. It is a verification strategy on SSH sent. So let it be the default known host file verification. Availability. Keep this agent online as much as possible. Bring this agent online according to your schedule. Bring this agent online when in demand and take offline when ideal. These are how do you want the agent to be available. You can keep it offline only when the job is triggered, then this will become active. Alright. So let me go with the first option. Now click on save. And here it is listing all the nodes. Now click on this node. Here it is showing that our agent is offline because the Jenkins failed to launch the agent process. See this log, identify why it is not launched. Okay, the selected credential not found because I have added the credential but not selected it. So again, go to this node slave 1 and go to configure. Here on this credential, let's select the Jenkins slave 1 private key. Now click on save. Now the node is being launched. Go to nodes. It is launching. So we have successfully added a Jenkins slave to the Jenkins master node. Now how do we schedule the jobs to this node? And we have used the option called build this node with label expression. Not we have used the option called use this node as much as possible. Okay. If we have selected the first option, then the jobs will be scheduled to this node all the time when it is free. Now we have selected the second option, that is matching the label. So let me go to any jobs and we'll show you how do we schedule it. So this is one job, iMedia dev build. Click on configure. Here on this general section, there would be an option called restrict where this project can be run. Click on this. Here, we need to define the label of the node. The label of the node is iMedia. And here, as per this label, it matches to one node. If you have multiple, it will list over here. So this particular job will be running only on this node that is matched this label. If I didn't select this option, what will happen? This job will be running on my master node. If that is already occupied, then that will go to the other slave node. But in this case, I have used the label expression. So click on save. Let me build this job, and it is a parameterized job, so it is prompting me to enter the server name. Let it be Ansible 1. Click on build. Now if you see the build number is 17, and it is waiting for the available executor on slave 1. Click on refresh. The job is completed. Let me click on this build number 17. Go to console output to make sure where it has run. Here, if you see, this job is building remotely on slave 1. This is what I have expected because I have defined the label expression. So this is how we schedule a job to be running on specific nodes.
How did you feel? Is it helpful? Appreciate our efforts in the comment section below. Hit like button, share with your friends about us, subscribe our channel to get further updates. Stay connected with us on social networking sites. For more free tutorials, visit our website www.learneticguide.net.